One of the most common debates in any sport is who is the best player. These discussions always have a plethora of opinions, and there seem to be an infinite amount of lists that others create, and nobody will exactly agree with one another. But today, we'll be looking at the 10 best players in NFL history, in my opinion. I will be using statistics and accolades and overall impact on the game to create my ranking, but this obviously is not a factual ranking, as are all opinions. You guys may disagree with me, and please let me know what your opinions are in the comments section. Before we start, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, it really helps out the channel. But other than that, let's get into the top 10 NFL players of all time. Just one thing I wanted to add before we start with this video is that it's been a little bit since I made my last NFL video, and that's because the NBA playoffs going on. I tend to make my uploads relevant with what's going on right now. So once the NBA playoffs end and the NFL season starts, there'll definitely be more NFL content for those who prefer the NFL content. Other than that, let's continue with this video. Starting our list off at number 10 is Barry Sanders, the Detroit Lions running back from 1989 to 1998. Just like everybody else currently or in the future on this list, Barry Sanders is a Hall of Famer. He's been selected to 10 Pro Bowls and has made 6 All-Pro selections. He also has an MVP under his belt, and his consistency is off the charts. Every single season he has rushed for over 1,100 yards, and that is including a couple of seasons where he missed some time. His best season was in 1997, where he tallied 2,053 rush yards as well as winning the MVP award that year, and averaging 128 yards per game. But surprisingly, Barry Sanders only retired 2 years later, very well still in his prime. I think Barry Sanders definitely could be higher up on this list if he continued playing, as clearly he still had a lot in the tank. But even despite retiring early, he finished 4th in career rushing yards with 15,269 in NFL history. Another thing that helps Barry Sanders on this list is just how impressive he was to watch. He was one of the most flashy running backs, and his talent was clear by the way he would juke and spin through defenders. One blemish to Barry Sanders' career is that he had very little playoff success. However, a lot of the years that the Lions did make the playoffs was solely because of Barry Sanders. And it's not as easy to impact how your team does at the running back position, unlike a quarterback who has much more control over the offense. I think it's clear that if Barry Sanders continued his career, then he definitely could be number 1 on the rushing charts. But instead, we have to live with what happened, and that is why Barry Sanders is at number 10. At number 9, we have another running back, and that is Emmitt Smith. Now, there's a lot of debate as to who is better, Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith, but I think Emmitt Smith just barely edges out Barry Sanders, and here's why. Emmitt Smith showed more longevity than Barry Sanders. He played for 5 more seasons than Barry Sanders, and another reason I think he's slightly better than Barry Sanders is the fact that he has 3 rings. His playoff experience and success was much higher than Barry Sanders. Despite having a better team surrounding him, these rings still account to Emmitt Smith's legacy. Emmitt Smith is an 8-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, and won the MVP award in 1993. His best statistical season, though, was in 1995, where he rushed for 1,700 yards along with 25 touchdowns, averaging 110 yards per game. He has the second most career touchdowns at the running back position with 175. But arguably the most important aspect of Emmitt Smith's game was that he finished 1st in career rushing yards in NFL history with 18,355 yards. Even though Emmitt Smith did dwindle a little bit towards the end of his career, especially in Arizona, he played for a total of 15 years, which goes to show how much longevity he had in him. And that's one of the main reasons he ended up 1st on the career rushing yards list. With all these accomplishments in mind, I think it makes a pretty good case for why Emmitt Smith is number 9 on this list. At number 8, we have the 3rd running back in a row, and this is Walter Payton. Now, I think Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, and Walter Payton are all neck and neck, and I think Walter Payton barely comes out in front for the best among these 3 running backs. I think Walter Payton is better than Barry Sanders because he has slightly more longevity, along with winning a ring. And I think he's better than Emmitt Smith because he had less help than Emmitt Smith. He was slightly more efficient than Emmitt Smith while on the field. And Walter Payton was a much more versatile running back. Walter Payton has the most receiving yards in NFL history from a non-receiver. Not only did he have the threat of being a top running back, but he also could back up his running game with a very efficient receiving game. Walter Payton has 9 Pro Bowls, 5 All-Pros, 1 ring, and an MVP he earned in 1977. He also made 2 Hall of Fame teams, the Hall of Fame All-1970s team and the Hall of Fame All-1980s team. He has the second most rushing yards in NFL history, only behind Emmitt Smith, with 16,726, and he has the 5th most rushing touchdowns with 110. Already in this list, it's impossibly tough to rank these players, as they're all top tier NFL players, and depending on the day, I could put them in different spots. But I have Walter Payton at number 8. At number 7, we have Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers since 2008. Aaron Rodgers started his first 3 seasons on the Packers as a backup behind Brett Favre, but finally took the starting job in 2008. Since then, Rodgers has had 14 seasons where he's been a starter, and his trophy case is pretty impressive. Although he only has 1 Super Bowl win, he has 4 MVP awards, the second most in NFL history, only behind Peyton Manning. He's a 10-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro, and made the Hall of Fame All-2010s team. He's 10th in passing yards all time with 55,360 and 5th in passing touchdowns with 449. But what's most impressive about Rodgers is how efficient he is. He is most likely the most efficient quarterback in NFL history. He has the second highest passer rating, only behind Patrick Mahomes with a 104.5 rating. He has only thrown 93 interceptions compared to his 449 touchdowns. And I'm sure many people can agree that Aaron Rodgers is the most physically talented quarterback in NFL history. Some may argue Mahomes has that, but as of right now, with his talent and longevity, it goes to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers recorded his 1 ring in 2010. That is the main blemish of Aaron Rodgers' career, is the fact that he has 4 MVPs but only 1 ring. And while 1 ring is surely impressive, it doesn't stack up as well against other quarterbacks with more rings, such as Montana or Brady. But with the sheer success that Aaron Rodgers has had with his talent and his regular season success, earning him 4 MVPs, if you have 4 MVPs, it'd be criminal to not put Aaron Rodgers in the top 10. So I think the number 7 spot is fair for him. Just outside of the top 5, we got Joe Montana, who's coming in at the number 6 spot. For those who don't know, Joe Montana was the quarterback of the 49ers from 79 to 92, and then he finished his last 2 seasons with the Chiefs. During his NFL career, he received 8 Pro Bowl selections, 3-time All-Pro, 4 Super Bowls, and won 2 MVPs. He won 3 Super Bowl MVPs in the 4 that he won, and is also a member of the Hall of Fame All-1980s team. The main reason Joe Montana is this high is because of his accomplishments, and how he's widely regarded as the best Super Bowl player in NFL history, just because of how much of a high level he would play on the big stage. If we look at his total Super Bowl stats, he went 4-0, threw for 1,142 yards, threw 11 touchdowns with no interceptions, and had a total of a 127.8 passer rating. Joe Montana was practically perfect in the Super Bowl. One thing that does drag Joe Montana down a little is his normal stats. He wasn't a flashy passer, nor are his stats anything mind-blowing. He ranks in the top 20 for most major passing categories, but not much higher than that. But what's really impressive is Joe Montana's ability to command his offense and how he would clutch up on the biggest stage in the NFL. In my opinion, Joe Montana's best season was in 1989. He went 11-2, had a 70% completion percentage, and a 26-8 touchdown ratio, winning MVP and a ring in the same season. Joe Montana's intellect and clutchness is what puts him at the number 6 spot. Now we've entered our top 5. Starting off the top 5, we have Jim Brown, fullback for the Cleveland Browns from 1957 to 1965. Jim Brown is widely regarded as the greatest running back of all time and one of the greatest players in NFL history. And I do think he is the greatest running back of all time. Every single season Jim Brown was in the league, he was a Pro Bowler, and he led the league in rushing 8 out of the 9 seasons in the league. And when he retired, he held most of the major rushing records. Despite his short 9-year career, he won 9 Pro Bowls, was an 8-time All-Pro, won an NFL championship, and won MVP 3 times, clearly earning him the Hall of Fame All-1960s team. Even though he only played for 9 seasons, he is currently placed 6th in career touchdowns all time with 106, and 7th in rush yards per attempt, averaging 5.2 yards per attempt. His best season was in 1963, where he rushed for 1,863 yards, ran for 12 touchdowns, averaged 6.4 yards per attempt, and 133 yards per game. And somehow this season, he did not win MVP, placing second to Y.A. Tittle in 1963. Another huge aspect of Jim Brown's legacy was his perseverance through adversity with the strong presence of racial discrimination at his time. He played through the civil rights movement despite all of the outside pressure and still became known as the greatest running back of all time, creating a path for many other African Americans to play the sport to follow. His talent on the football field, as well as his perseverance and combating racial adversity, is what puts him in the top 5. At number 4, we have the Sheriff, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was the quarterback for the Colts from 1998 to 2010, and then the quarterback of the Broncos from 2012 to 2015. Impressively, he won a ring with each team, as well as a league record 5 MVPs. He has a Super Bowl MVP from his Colts ring, 14 Pro Bowls, and a 7-time All-Pro selection. He also made the Hall of Fame All-2000s team. Peyton Manning is widely regarded as the best regular season player in NFL history. I mean, 5 MVPs should speak for itself. He has the 3rd most passing yards and passing touchdowns in NFL history, only behind Brees and Brady in both categories, having 71,940 passing yards and 539 touchdowns. Another crazy stat about Peyton Manning is that he's exceeded 4,000 passing yards in 14 seasons. And clearly his best season was in 2013 with the Broncos, where he went 13-3, but threw for 5,477 yards along with 55 touchdowns, both records that stand up to this day. He also averaged 342 passing yards a game. This season obviously won him MVP, and that year the Broncos took home the AFC Championship, but lost to the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. If Manning had slightly more playoff success, I think he easily could be regarded as the greatest quarterback of all time. But his 2 rings compared to Brady's 7 is pale in comparison. And the 2nd ring that Peyton Manning won was mostly from the Broncos defense, as Manning put up a 68 passer rating that season. But overall, Manning's longevity and his immense regular season success puts him at number 4. At number 3, we have the only defensive player to make this list, and that is Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor played for the New York Giants from 1981 to 93, and his resume is as stacked as it gets for being a defensive player. He is a 10-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, has won 2 rings, and won the 1986 MVP as a defensive player. He has the 9th most sacks in NFL history with 142. His best season comes in 1986, where he started all 16 games, and is one of the rare players in NFL history to record more than 20 sacks in a season, having 20.5 sacks. And this obviously earned him a Defensive Player of the Year award and the MVP selection. One thing that is a bummer about Lawrence Taylor is that when he played, some of the stats, such as tackles, weren't recorded yet. So the fact that Lawrence Taylor is getting all of this credit, despite not having much statistics, that makes his feat much more impressive. And despite this, he won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Lawrence Taylor is definitely the GOAT when it comes to defensive players, and that is what puts him in the top 3 players in NFL history. At number 2, we have the only receiver to make this list, and that is Jerry Rice. I think Jerry Rice clearly is the best non-quarterback player in NFL history, because his resume and his totals are as good as you can get. He has 13 Pro Bowl selections, 10 All-Pro selections, 3 Super Bowl rings, and one of those rings he won the Super Bowl MVP. He also makes 2 Hall of Fame All-Decade teams, the Hall of Fame All-1980s and 1990s teams. Added to that, he has 2 Offensive Player of the Year awards. His regular season and postseason success are both astonishing. No wide receiver ever has won the MVP award, but Jerry Rice got as close as any of them have, placing 2nd in voting in 1987 and 1995. Jerry Rice played for 20 seasons at a position that you don't see longevity often. One crazy thing to keep in mind is that in 1986, Jerry Rice tallied over 1,000 yards, and 16 seasons later, in 2002, he also tallied over 1,000 yards, showing a crazy amount of longevity. I think his best season was in 1995, where he had the most receptions in his career with 122, and led the league in yards with 1,848 yards, recording an astonishing 115 yards per game. Due to the success and longevity, Jerry Rice leads every single major receiving category. First in receptions with 1,549, first in receiving yards with 22,895, first in career receiving touchdowns with 197, first in total touchdowns with 208, and first in yards from scrimmage with 23,540. The most astonishing out of all of these is receiving yards. Larry Fitzgerald is second in receiving yards in that category with 17,492. But Jerry Rice has a 5,000 yard lead for first place with 22,895. Similar to Joe Montana, Jerry Rice also picked up the pace greatly in the Super Bowl. In his 3 Super Bowls with the Niners, he recorded 215, 148, and 149 yard performances, 2 of those games having 3 touchdowns. All of this amounts to why Jerry Rice is the second best player in NFL history. And at number 1, we have the greatest player in NFL history, Tim Tebow. Now, even though Tim Tebow only played 3 seasons, 2010, 2011, and 2012, his impact on the field was immediately recognized. He earned the nickname Tebow Mania for a reason, miraculously delivering the 2011 Broncos to the playoffs with a pretty impressive 12-6 touchdown to interception ratio. His QB rating was 38.6, but we can ignore that because he did such a great job this season. He also threw his iconic touchdown to Demaryius Thomas in overtime to advance them on to the next round. You are a pretty dumb individual if you did not understand that I was joking, because the greatest of all time clearly is Tom Brady. His resume is eye candy. 15 Pro Bowls, 7 rings, 5 Super Bowl MVPs out of those 7 rings, 3-time MVP. Just like Jerry Rice, he has enough longevity to make 2 Hall of Fame All-Decade teams, the 2000s team and the 2010s team, and possibly he even could make a run at the 2020s team. He won Comeback Player of the Year in 2009, 2 Offensive Player of the Years, is first in passes completed, pass yards, and passing touchdowns in his career, and he's still playing and still performing at a high level. Considering his latest season with the Buccaneers, he threw for a career-high 5,300 yards and the second best in his career, 43 touchdowns. This video would be 30 minutes long if I went over all of Brady's accomplishments, but his mixture of longevity and success should be clear to anybody that he is the greatest player of all time. I think Brady's best year was probably 2016, the suspension year. He missed the 4 first games due to the Deflategate allegations, and then went on to go 11-1 in those 12 games he played, throwing for 3,500 yards and having an insane 28-2 touchdown to interception ratio. And of course, creating the best comeback in NFL history in the Super Bowl against Atlanta to win his 5th ring. And I think it was after that ring that people started to acknowledge him as the GOAT. And since then, he has added on an MVP and 2 more rings, along with just improving his stats furthermore. So there's no doubt in my mind that Tom Brady is the greatest player in NFL history. And that will wrap up our video. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you did enjoy. As always, I'm going to be desperate. I'm going to say like and subscribe. That would mean a lot. Thank you so much for the people who have. I noticed that there was only 1 defensive player, and that was Lawrence Taylor. And I was trying to include another defensive player in there because this list was very offense-centric. But looking back on it, I think Deion Sanders probably is the second best player, or possibly Reggie White. And I would probably put them barely behind the running backs of Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, etc. I think this list mostly is offensive players due to the fact that you see the success of offensive players more. And this is very arguable, but I personally think that offensive position players have more an impact on the game than defensive players do. There's only so much a defender can impact the game compared to, say, a running back or a quarterback. But that being said, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to comment your list down below, and I will see you guys in the next Heaps video.